Hello, everyone, and welcome to Petite to Queen's Claim Your Career Crown podcast. I'm your host, Lynn, and today I'm joined by our special guest, Jonathan Stewart. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 ways neurodivergent entrepreneurs do business differently. Based in the UK and founder of Simplicity Specialist, Jonathan is a neurodivergent entrepreneur, out-of-the-box business coach, systems analyst, and a Notion certified consultant dedicated to helping entrepreneurs build a business that works for them. Jonathan helps his clients break free of traditional business advice and find joy in their business. Along with that, Jonathan also hosts 2 must-see podcasts, or must-listen podcasts, Working Well in Business and Notion Nerds. And he was a guest speaker at the recent Introvertpreneur Summit. And I challenge everyone to say that fast 6 times. Over the last decade, through his love of psychology, the study of human nature, and teaching guitar lessons, Jonathan realized the traditional business model doesn't work for everyone. He has used that knowledge and experience to educate hundreds of entrepreneurs on how to break free and break the mold and make their business work for them rather than against them through finding the right tools and systems. Jonathan, I'm really excited to have you on the show today. This is going to be a fascinating topic.
I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to talk, and I will definitely talk. That is one thing I will definitely do, which is good considering it's a podcast.
It is indeed. And for those of you who are joining us for the very first time to this podcast, Claim Your Career Crown, hey, take that moment right now and subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. And while you're there on whatever platform that is, if you love the show and you love what we're doing, please give us a 5-star review. We would very much appreciate it. So, Jonathan, let's really dive right in because this is such a fascinating topic. And I think some of our listeners and viewers may not have heard of neurodivergent as a category, and so, really diving into that and what got you started, and would love to learn more.
Yeah. So neurodivergent and neurodiversity it's one of those amazing terms which can be really valuable for people and also be a little bit problematic. To me, neurodiverse means people who think slightly outside of the box. They usually have various conditions such as autism, ADHD, and they have to work a little bit differently to fit themselves. And I kind of use that terminology to help people figure out, one, that they can work their way versus the other way, because often the advice given to people is making so many assumptions that say you've got to work in a certain way. And when you are neurodiverse in whatever way, shape or form you may be, in other words, you think slightly differently to the norm, you work a little bit differently. I myself, my neurospiciness, as it's known in the kind of space, is I am autistic, I have depression, I have social anxiety. These are all things that are real for me in my life and show up in both my life and in my business too. And it's important to consider them, whereas often in the business world, whether this be entrepreneurship, whether this be in the bigger business, the job, it's very much understanding how you work. And everyone works slightly differently. And I feel that's really important, that even if you don't identify with neurodiverse or you don't identify with any of the labels, because labels are labels, they're useful until they're not, being able to view things from a slightly different lens, which is my specialty as a neurodiverse entrepreneur, is so valuable and can unlock a lot and free people from the boxes that they think they should be in, which is kind of what I had to do for myself.
Yeah. And so I'd love to hear how you got started in what you're doing, because you just said it unlocked it for yourself.
Yeah. So I got started. I've always wanted to work a slightly different way. I cannot hold down a traditional job. the last job I had was in care, and I ended up annoying most people because I questioned everything due to a want to actually understand,
Yeah.
not from the lack of saying that I know better. And for me, I got started in the work that I do now as a simplicity specialist all the way back. It treads back to when I used to just teach guitar to kids and adults, which sounds very weird going from guitar teaching to business consulting and systems. But for me, the one thread that's followed through is working, like starting from the individual that sat opposite me. Often when I'm not sure what it's like in the US, but here in the UK, a lot of what music's about is completing grades, getting things done, getting all the marks, ticking the boxes. And to me, music isn't about that. It's an extension of who you are and the way that you work, as is business. And so it's a very personal like relationship with music, and it always has been for me. So I taught guitar and I helped my students whether they wanted to do exams, and I had a number of them who wanted to do traditional music exams, and I helped them through that, or just whether it was to have an hour or half an hour strumming on a guitar making a ton of noise. And I have so many stories of kids who have been so quiet and reserved, who have actually come out of their shell and found a love for music and a love for what they're doing because I just gave them the space to do so. And so I started all the way back teaching music. I then built all of my own website. I learned everything. I went way too in depth, like I like to do, trying to learn how business works, and took all the courses. As of to date, I think I've spent $30,000 in courses because, of course, I got a system to track how much I was spending. And today, and even then, there was things that were missing that didn't quite align with the way that my brain worked, and I couldn't figure it out, which led me into doing a whole multitude of things. I'm a tech person. I'm good with tech. I know how systems work. I know how to put things together. And I honestly just like it when I can make something that's not supposed to do something that I want, because it's so much more fun. Because often in the virtual assistant space, which is where I kind of spent a little bit of time in, it was very much, oh, you use my system. This is what I use. I use X app. I use Y app. I use this. So you use this because I'll be managing it for you. And for me, that's fine until the virtual assistant or the tech person moved on, and they are left with a solution that doesn't fit them, and they can't figure out how to use it. And it holds businesses back. I have used a countless number of applications in my time, and some of them stopped me from doing the stuff that I really loved doing. And so for me, it's super important to have the right tools that fit you. I then found myself, I literally fell into a tool called Notion, which is a all-in-one application which helps people to kind of, it's almost like Lego for like piecing things together. You can have databases. It's like Google Docs, but with Airtable and a bunch of other tools meshed together. And that is where I really fell in love with the systems aspect, because it was the first tool that allowed me to figure out how I worked, that unlocked the ability to actually go, hey, I can't stand Asana. I don't work like with lists. That drives me insane. There's not enough information. And Notion unlocked a way of me being able to just almost matrix and move things around in a way that fit me. And so I became one of the first 3 certified consultants from Notion. And I started building systems for people. I started actually building them and designing them that fit the way that they worked. However, the problem with Notion is if you don't know the way that you work, Notion is going to be really hard, and there is a massive learning curve. And so that shifted me onto what I do now as a simplicity specialist, which is helping people find things that are enough for them, because simplicity is about having enough, having exactly what you need, not more, not less, just enough. But enough specialist didn't sound quite as sexy as simplicity specialist. So I just stuck with simplicity specialist, and I like the alliteration. It rolls off the tongue and it feels really nice. So yeah, that's what drove me from back to forth, from guitar teaching to what I do now.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, when you think about music and how it's you're really creating this pattern and a flow, and it is allowing you to be completely self-expressing, so that it makes sense to how this has, to me, I can see that flow into what you're doing now. And I'm also fascinated by that recognition. That first step is to, well, how do you work? What is going to help you be more effective and be more efficient without creating a burden, because it actually fits what you need. To your point, I always like that expression, which may sound terrible, but keep it simple, stupid, right? So when you make things overly complex, it just makes it so that you don't want to do that, right? And then you don't actually use the system or use it effectively. So I am curious, as you've gone through this, you were describing some of the processes, but when you are working with someone, how are you then figuring out, but working with someone, how they do work best? What's going to be the best fit?
That varies depending on the person and where they are in their business journey, because we're all in different stages, but often it very much starts from them and figuring out what they actually want. Because often when I speak to business, they're like, oh, tell me how to build this system. I want to set this up in here, and I want to do this thing here, and I need to be more organized. I need to fix something. Often systems are thought of as a way of making yourself better and trying to change who you are, which for me doesn't make any sense at all, because the way that you are is the way that you are. Change doesn't happen until you know what you have in front of you. And so for me, systems are about working around yourself. A system itself is just a bunch of components that are put together. Just like a mobile phone, there are 7 to 11 components that fit together for a singular purpose. And so it always, for me, when I work with someone, it's like, what do you actually want? And it's surprising how hard it is to answer that question, especially because the moment they answer, what do you want? And they tell me what they want, I ask them why. And often that's when things get really interesting of like, I don't know. Okay, so what do you want? And it's a process of really, I love it when I have a conversation with someone, when I first start talking to someone, they're like, you don't mess around, do you? You go straight in there. I'm like, yeah, well, that's what I do. That's the point. If you'd like to have a lovely, delicious, wonderful conversation, happy to do that too. I can talk to you about anything you'd like. I can dive deep into the psychology of many things, but I think you're here to get something that fits you. And for that, I need to know you, and I need to know you yesterday. And I love the thing that I find so exciting about my work, and I will shut up in a minute. The thing that I find so exciting about my work is seeing people go, oh, it's that simple. And to your point of like keep it simple, stupid. I love that term simple, because it's often like linked with minimalism and like minimal and less. And as I've worked with varying different business owners, often what happens is simplicity becomes this thing where you have to have less, and then you're lacking all of the nuance that you need to build a business that fits you, is to have that nuance and that understanding of not just what you want, but also what the reality of what you have is, which is where the neurodiversity comes in of like, how is your energy? Are you a spoonie, someone who needs to manage their energy super carefully? Are you on the spectrum, which means you can, your brain, this is my experience of autism, where your brain just never shuts up and doesn't leave you alone. So you need easy ways of tracking things and being able to keep yourself moving when things get really hard. Do you have ADHD, where your attention span just jumps from thing to thing, and then you forget everything the moment you move away, and you have to figure out these boxes to put things in? Also, these are all just very simplifications. I could go much deeper, but I won't, because we'll be here all night. And how do you work? Do you have a family that you have to provide for? Is that the reality of your situation? And often what happens is business advice is tailored to the person telling the advice, which is great. And there is absolutely zero wrong with that. but also it's about from the person who is actually speaking, hence why you notice I clarified every single thing that I said, because I want to be clear of the context, because the context is key when it comes to building a business, because business is personal. It is forever personal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I really appreciate you bringing up the shadow side of the word simple, because every word or, feeling or emotion, they all have those shadow sides. And sometimes those shadow sides are actually there in the sense of how we're using simple in this case. It's not the shadow side. It's actually making it better by that simple approach. So I liked that you touched on that. I'm curious, with everything that you've been done and through this journey, were there ever times that you felt stuck yourself or that something was holding you back?
Yes, all the time. All the time. I still have those moments now. Yeah, all the time. There are so many. How long you got? I've got a great list of them, of times where I've actually not worked with myself and have listened to people who aren't quite, who don't have what I need. I've had that so many times in my business, and it still happens now, even with all my amazing knowledge. It's so easy to get caught up in what is classed as normal and typical and the way you should be working. For me, it's a constant process of like, I know that the way that I work, I am a little bit of a perfectionist, which has its shadow and light side. It has both sides. There are benefits and there are massive drawbacks. And by understanding how I work, it's less about trying to make myself better and more about understanding the way that I work and working from that. And like there's that awareness piece, which awareness is another fluffy word which is misused so badly. And what I find really important is knowing yourself,
Yeah.
which sounds absolutely easy, but it's horrible and it's hard and it's tough and it's a lifelong thing. And for me, that's exciting because I will never fully know the extent of myself, which is fine. And the perfectionist in me is not happy about that and wants to know the fullness of myself. And then I try to be a perfectionist of not being a perfectionist. That's my new one at the moment. It's like I'm being a perfect, non-perfect person where I have to be completely like just get everything out quickly and don't think about everything. And then it doesn't align with the things that I care about anyway. That's a good one for me. It's the trying to be perfect and not being perfect. Hilarious.
Well, perfectionism is overrated. And it's one of those things that I've found through also myself and with my team and a lot of other people that can be something that can hold you back. And that is really intriguing to me. As you were talking, I was making all these connections. And when you're working with your clients, what do you find is one of those? Is it the perfectionism? Is it something else that just the fact that they're, that they're round and they're trying to be stuffed into a triangle shape, or what do you find holds many people back?
They think there's something wrong with them.
Ah.
In some way, shape, or form, whether it's really, really small or they've done some of the work. They feel like they're doing something wrong. That kind of connects a lot of people together. And in the business world, we're being shouted at all the time. All the things we're told to do, all the things we have to do. And of course, it can get really exhausting, especially if you're shouting in your own head too, which, yeah, that's what my brain does. It's always shouting in my head other things as well as what other people are saying. And I think that's the thing that connects all of my clients together, is they have to change something about them to find that success, or they have to like almost cheat themselves, or they don't fully, when they come to me, they say, I don't trust the way that the systems that I'm using, I don't trust this, I don't trust that. But really it falls back to the fact that they don't trust themselves and the way that they work. And often society talks about all the things you're doing wrong. And so they are very hypercritical. A lot of my audience are creatives, perfectionists. I have a quiz about that, like the different profiles. And the higher percentage of them are the perfectionists, the minimalists, the people who think they have to have either less or more, or are very creative and struggle with, like, it's very external versus internal. And for me, I find the internal more fascinating and more interesting because and by internal, I don't mean the navel gazing, look how amazing I am, because oh my gosh, no one has time for that. It's beyond the navel gazing. It's the seeing of all of the pieces that exist, all of the components in your system, all of the pieces, the parts, the bits, and you are yourself a system, all of the bits of our body that work together and work against us sometimes, as well as you are a component in your own system. And the system being your business. And often we ignore the key component, the thing that doesn't change. There's so much going on in the world right now, but we are always in our business. My business has gone through so many changes over the years, but I've always been the same. And there is that one thread that went all the way back to teaching guitar.
Yeah.
And it's about finding that thread.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things that you've been touching base on that I made a connection to was also that when people are shouting at you or they're all these things bombarding you, is that picking up on that shiny object in the sense of, oh, well, then I just need to do this. And instead of, taking that moment for introspection and say, okay, wait a minute, is that really going to fit? Is that going to serve me right now? Is it going to be a distraction? And so that you can actually make that evaluation pretty quickly, so that you don't get off on some tangent. And then, really coming back, does that work for me? Does that work for my business right now? And I love that thread that always goes through. So for everyone who's tuned in and they're, I'm sure, fascinated by this conversation, and they're seeing in themselves like, well, yeah, that's me. Things just, I feel like a square peg in a round hole. What should listeners do next?
Start with you. And what I mean by that is talk about what you want. That the method that I use when I work with people is not a linear one, because it doesn't work. Linearity is overrated. It starts with one of three things. It starts with, what do you want? Like, what is the thing that you want? It's that reflection of like, where am I? What do I want? What is important for me? And then it's like knowing what you have. What is the reality that you're in? This is how you avoid or look away from that just navel gazing, because often what I see, and I've worked with spiritual business owners as well, it's often a lot of that reflection, and they're kind of running blind because they don't know what they have in front of them, the environment that they're in, the actual reality, whether they have children, family, whether that is the mental reality and the physical reality. What are the limitations of what I can and cannot do? There are only a certain amount of hours in the day, and what do you want to do with it? And then it's like, what do you want to do? Because doing is a funny word. Everybody talks about like the organizing piece, but no one talks about what do you do? And how do you do? And for me, I find that the most interesting, because when you get into doing things, it very deliciously connects between the friction of like what you want and what you have. There is an innate friction between the two, and that often helps to drive that decision on what you actually want to do. So using your shiny object thing as a great example, because I love having rants on that one. I am great with shiny objects. They attract me very, very quickly. And it depends. And a very funny thing, I recently created a workshop, and I was advertising the workshop, or planning to, didn't do that, ended up got very sidetracked in the creation of the workshop. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to create something that was really delicious and yummy. And what I did is I then got stuck down a rabbit hole, because Halloween, it was around Halloween, and the workshop was due to air on Halloween. And I got sidetracked by music and Halloween music. And so it's like, oh, I need to promote this. This is what I want. I want more people to see what I have. And what I'm doing right now is looking at Halloween music. Oh, how can I connect this with this to create something that works? Shiny objects are fun. I want to kind of pull away the guilt of shiny object syndrome, because everyone has that, like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be laser focused. Yeah, there is a time for focus. There is a time for hustle. There is a time for rest. But it's never really that simple. And it's about really knowing what you want, what you have, and what you're going to do. And you don't have to start with one. You can start wherever you like, because they all work together and they loop together. It's not a 1, 2, 3, which is often what science or a certain type of science tell us. Instead of it being linked together, instead of being 1, 2, 3, it's linked together. Sometimes you capture something, or you have an idea, and then you move into actually immediately actioning it. And then other times it's very much a process of like, well, I don't know what I want. Well, what do you have? Oh, I don't know what I have. Okay, what do you want? Well, I don't know what to do. Well, what do you want? Or what do you have? And there is always a way to move forward in a way that works for you, because you're the only one who has every single one of the answers. And that, for me, is what I do in my work, is helping people, because I don't know nothing. Well, I do. I have a lot of knowledge and information, but what I don't have is your context. And for me, that's the important part, is people bring the context into the conversation, and it's very much creating something that fits you, because just having blocks of information isn't enough.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's really true. Those 3 ways. What do I want? What do I have? And what will work for me? And to your point, I do want to say, sometimes in that evaluation of the shiny object, you say, yeah, I do. I need it. I want it. I got to have it. And it's an opportunity that you do need to jump on. There's, just like everything, there's 2 sides to that shiny object. And sometimes it's a distraction, but other times it is a golden opportunity, and you need to seize it. So Jonathan, thank you so much for sharing the 3 ways neurodivergent entrepreneurs do business differently. This has truly been a fascinating conversation. I'm so glad that you were here. And I know that our listeners are going to want to know more about you and where they can find
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, simplicity-specialist.com. And you can also find me primarily on Instagram. I'm often pottering around there. If you don't know whether I'm around, just send me a DM. I am always happy to talk and chat.
All right. And we'll make sure that all those links are 1 click away right below. And for everyone who joined us, this has been an incredibly informative discussion. And if you have any ideas that you would like to share, please leave us a comment down below. We love hearing your thoughts. And of course, if you would like to suggest a topic or have a specific question, you can email us at jointheconversation@petitetoqueen.com. And to stay current on all of our insightful advice, our breakthrough advantages, the incredible resources, and never miss an episode like the one today, you can sign up for our weekly wisdoms at petitetoqueen.com. And you won't miss a single thing. I want to thank everyone who tuned in. And Jonathan, thank you so much. This has been a tremendous episode.
It has been my pleasure. It has been absolutely my pleasure. And I look forward to hearing tons of questions. And my one big thing is, like, there's nothing wrong with you. Start from you. You're not broken. It's not about fixing you. It's about creating something that fits for you.